Hey everyone, it's Craig with One Man's Cancer Journey. Tonight's episode is entitled White Blood Cell Counts Don't Fail Me Now. If you're a fan of Universal Florida Mardi Gras, you may recognize the nod to the phrase that's often chanted in the parade, feet don't fail me now. So today we went in and we met with Dr. Chajani, our oncologist, had a good conversation with him, and then we went up to the fourth floor for our infusion and they began to draw the blood, and we were wondering if our white blood count cells would be high enough for me to get the full treatment today: chemotherapy, immunotherapy, and clinical drug trial. So stay tuned to find out what happened. So today was my chemo day. The big elephant in the room was my white blood count cells going to be high enough, the count of them high enough to be able to continue on with my chemotherapy. The good news is that they were, and so I got a full round of treatment today. I got the clinical drug, I got the Fulfex treatment with all of the immunotherapy and the chemotherapy. But prior to the administration of the chemotherapy, we had a visit with Dr. Tajani to talk about just a regular check-in that we do before each infusion, but we talked about the CAT scan that was performed yesterday. So as part of the clinical trial, the sponsor requires that I get a CAT scan every 6 weeks. And so even though I had one about 2 weeks ago when I had my gallbladder attack, that one didn't count for the study, so I had one done yesterday. And he had gotten the results back. And while we were excited after the gallbladder, we were a little let down after this one. What we did find is actually in those 2 weeks, while the mass in my stomach continues to shrink, the lesions on my liver showed some growth and swelling. We didn't see spreading to any other place in my body or more lesions within my liver, but the size of the lesions showed some increase. And what we learned is when I get a CT scan, one of the things that happen is they do what's called with and without contrast. And the contrast is a dye that they inject. So they do the scan, and then they inject this dye into your body, and the cancer cells actually like this dye, and so they suck it up. And so when you see darker spots, that means that the cancer cells are actively sucking up that fusion of the contrast. And so what we're really looking for is for the color to lighten of those lesions and for them to shrink. This time we did not see that in the liver. We did see some growth. But because we saw such good progress when we had the chemotherapy, we're hoping that this was just a matter of it's been 4 weeks since I actually had the chemotherapy, because 2 weeks ago I only got the immunotherapy and the clinical drug. So mixed bag, again, disappointing that we saw some small growth and darkening of the lesions on the liver, but excited also that the mass in the stomach continues to shrink, that that we didn't see more lesions, and that we didn't see it spread anywhere else. So hopefully with today's chemo regimen, and as you can see, I'm doing well. I've been eating throughout the day, and I don't have pain, and I don't have nausea. So just feeling really good and grateful, and hopeful that we can get this chemo back in and treating the cancer and doing what it was doing when we were doing it more regularly. We did learn that we'll probably be going through chemo for 4 to 6 months. It's 8 rounds that they typically go through until your body just kind of says, that's all I can take from a chemo perspective. And at that time, we would explore, depending on what has happened, radiation or potentially surgery or just maintenance mode. So we're hopeful that the chemo, getting back on the regimen, and getting the full treatment will help to shrink those lesions and lighten the color of those lesions in the liver, telling us that the cancer is being eaten at and weakened, and we will move forward with that. But just wanted to kind of give you that update on the day of one of my treatments. So for my gratitude moment today, I'm grateful for data. My team will tell you at work that I'm a data nerd. I'm always asking for how do we get data to show our story, to tell our story, to prove the facts, and to pull together recommendations based upon the data that we're seeing. That still holds through in healthcare as well. So while we didn't necessarily get the data we wanted to from today's CT scan or yesterday's CT scan, we did get data that helped us to know the chemotherapy is working, and so we need to keep that, and we want to keep it at full strength. So making it through these chemo days and managing the nausea is important. But that data helps us to make decisions and inform our treatment going forward. And we decide as a care team, Megan, myself, and my clinical doctors. And so I'm grateful that we have data, that we have ways to collect data in the healthcare that can really help to measure and monitor what's going on inside my body and how it's reacting to the treatment that we're providing to it. And I pray that we continue to be able to gather this information so that we can make better decisions around my treatment and ultimately cure of this cancer. So thank you for joining me today. Again, I'm Craig with One Man's Cancer Journey, and I hope that you have a blessed week.